For Historical Collections here at UAB, and I want to welcome each and every one of you here to what I think is going to be an absolutely fascinating evening with Nightingale. Night with Nightingale, I'm sorry. This has been a labor of love, not only for myself, but for a number of people in this room. You know, when I look out my office, I look across and I can see the School of Nursing right across University Boulevard, and I notice the thing that links us is a skywalk. And it occurred to me that a lot more binds us together than just a skywalk. And in fact, one of the things that binds us together, we're going to learn more about tonight. One of the people that binds us together, a great iconic figure, not only in the history of nursing, but really in the history of healthcare, and that's Florence Nightingale. It has been a great pleasure for me to collaborate with the School of Nursing in this endeavor. It has exceeded my expectations thus far, and this is just the beginning of what I think will be a long and fruitful collaboration. I will say, just before we get started, that those of you who want CMEs or CNEs for this lecture, it has been approved, and just sign on the table outside by the CME sign-up table. Also, there are brochures out there encouraging membership in the Reynolds Associates. The programming that we do here as part of the Reynolds Lecture Series is not supported by state dollars. It is supported by the commitments of people like you who are interested in the kind of programming we bring here to UAB, and the first-rate, world-renowned speakers that we bring, just one of whom you're going to hear this afternoon. So again, this has been a great pleasure for me to collaborate with the school, and so without further ado, let me introduce you to the person who really helped make all of this happen, Dean Doreen Harper. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank Mike and his staff, who have been so incredible in this process and really partnering with us, because what I can share with you is without Dr. Reynolds and without the Reynolds Historical Library and without the Reynolds historical staff, this would not be possible. Today would not be possible, because they have been instrumental in really moving forward both the digitization of the Nightingale letters so that everyone can access them on the web through the library here at the Lister Hill Library, and also in helping us really conceptualize the wonderful exhibit that you're going to have access to this afternoon and your viewing of the letters. And I will just share with you my own personal experience when I came to UAB as a new dean. I had never been to Alabama. I can't say that anymore. I know every nook and cranny of Alabama. But as I came over here with Pat Cleveland, who's our archivist, and she kept saying, you've got to go over and see the Nightingale letters. And I mean, I couldn't even fathom that there were Nightingale letters here. And so we walked across the bridge and and I met Mike and a couple of his staff members at that time. And we walked in, and there was this box on a table. And they opened the box, an acid-free box, I might add. And out came several letters, and I was allowed to put on gloves and touch them and read them. And it was just inspirational, because the content of the letters was so different than anything I had read based on Nightingale's work up to that point. Because in some ways, these were not well published and well distributed works. So part of what I felt was we needed to figure out how to get these works out to the rest of the world. Well, I will share with you that at that point I was commuting back and forth to Connecticut. And I got on the plane with all the letters one night, and I almost missed the next plane getting back on because I was so involved in the letters, I wasn't paying attention. So they are really, really a great read. And I do encourage you to take some time and do that. But now let me get to the reason you're all here, which is to really learn about Florence Nightingale and this period of time that Nightingale has been engaged in not only advocacy for healthcare and nursing, but advocacy for public health. And one of the things that I think we're going to do tonight is learn about the context of Nightingale's work with our invited lecturer, Dr. Barbara Dossey. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Dossey. She is internationally recognized as a pioneer in the holistic nursing movement, and she is the international co-director and board member of the Nightingale Initiative for Global Health and the holistic nursing consultant in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She is also the co-director of an international nursing coaching association in Huntington, Virginia, and also a Florence Nightingale scholar, and author and co-author of 23 books. Her most recent includes Florence Nightingale, Mystic, Visionary, and Healer, and she is also the author of Holistic Nursing, a Handbook for Practice. Now, let me just share with you that Barbara's work covers, as one of my colleagues just told me, the waterfront. She started as a critical care nurse, a graduate of Baylor University with a baccalaureate in nursing, went on to Texas Women's University where she got a master's in nursing, and then on to the Union Institute where she acquired her PhD. But one of the things that she's done is she's moved from critical care nursing to holistic nursing to becoming a Nightingale scholar. And today we spent the day with Dr. Dossey, and one of the things that she shared with us was that Nightingale was probably going to be the work that she continued through the rest of her career. And I think that's pretty significant in that she has found that much to really, investigate as a part of her scholarship in nursing. She has been a fellow, or is a fellow, in the American Academy of Nursing. She's certified in holistic nursing. She is also, and I could go on, but I will share with you, she's also the wife of Dr. Larry Dossey, who is a noted alternative and complementary medicine physician with multiple works in the same area. So I think they're probably also a wonderful team. And when I was talking to Mike, he said, "Oh my goodness, we could get both of them to come." But I do want to share with you something that to me was pretty symbolic as we were talking to Barbara, and as I read through her vita. One of the things she did very recently was in the 72nd General Episcopal Church Convention in Philadelphia in July of 1997. Barbara wrote 3 of the 5 documents to accompany the resolution proposal to request the reconsideration of Nightingale's commemoration and for her name to be placed on the church calendar list of lesser feasts and fasts in the Book of Common Prayer. The official vote to accept Nightingale to the church calendar occurred in July 2000, and the inaugural Florence Nightingale commemorative service was held on August 12, 2001 at the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. and the Florence Nightingale Centennial Service, because you know this is the year, the 100th anniversary of Florence Nightingale's death, was held April 25th, 2010 at the Washington National Cathedral. So I think that gives you a sense of her dimensions. She is a person that has many, many components in terms of mind, body, spirit, and that's what she's going to share with you tonight. So without further ado, Barbara, come forward.
Okay, what I'd like for y'all to do is talk to your neighbor while I figure out attaching these things. Hug them, introduce yourself, and I'll bring you back in a minute. When I said that, I heard a y'all slip out. I am from the South. I grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas, and you just can't get it out of your system. So I want to say it is absolutely thrilling to be here. It is, I knew it was going to be big, but it is far bigger than anything that I ever imagined. Today is the first day of something that UAB, the Collaborating Center here, the library, and the community, these new partnerships that will emerge, will not only have an impact here in Birmingham, but in Alabama. And then because of the capacity we have right now with technology, we will be able to broadcast this many, many different ways. So I want to say, give yourself a big hug right now for being here, for getting out in the rain, and thank you for joining me. So you see on this first image that I have here, I also have my colleague's name, Diva Marie Beck. Diva is also a Nightingale Scholar, and we've known each other since 1999. And when you begin to get into Nightingale's letters, you really get a little mad because you start reading, and then Nightingale comes and visits you in dreams, and you'll be in the shower and you're talking to her and you're chopping vegetables, and it's like it goes on and on. But the lady is remarkable, and what I would like to do is tie some ideas and some thoughts and concepts with you about Nightingale. And I invite each of you to take the word, every time I say nurse, think of yourself as a community person that's very concerned about the health not only of Birmingham, but of all of Alabama. And when you begin to resolve some of the problems of health here in Alabama, you have the capacity to go ahead and get that message out. So I invite Florence Nightingale to come join us, as well as Diva Marie Beck. And hopefully one of these days you will get to meet her as well, because we've been talking about that. So what I would like to do in this presentation is put together ideas that the School of Nursing and the World Health Organization Collaborating Center here at the university is doing in combination with others. Look at these ideas and look at the impact for you as a concerned citizen living right here in Birmingham. Not only about the health of your own family and your community, but then how does this impact what is resolved here and decided on healthcare impacts not only the nation, but the world. And I am going to develop each one of these Millennium Goals. I just wanted to plant that seed. So here's what I would like to do in our time together. So you're going, where in the world is she going? I want to weave a big tapestry, because Nightingale's life is gigantic. So we'll be reviewing, first of all, the current understanding of Florence Nightingale's legacy. We're looking at the overview of the components of her insights that are not well known. I want to discuss, too, the relevance of the deeper and broader legacy here, and also consider what Nightingale's legacy means to each of us personally and collectively. And then let's renew our current sense of belonging, meaning, and purpose related to her legacy, because we are part of one world. We're not just isolated right here in Birmingham, Alabama. It is what we do. So I ask you right now just to take a breath in. This is what we do in the work. Take a breath in and then let it out. And you look at this burning candle flame, Use it as a metaphor for your soul, for your soul's work. What is it that you are called to do for yourself, for your family, for your neighborhood, for the larger community? What are some words, either in the article or the invitation that you received, that said, I want to go to that? What seed did you plant within you? And that's why you're here. So here's what I would say to you. I propose that we might become what Nightingale herself was. She was a global citizen and a nurse. So right here with nurse, you plant something else. Mother, father, archivist, anything there. Physician. What is it? What is it that you're passionate about? Health for all. Do you see it as a nice idea, or do you think it's a critical goal? It's not an either or. What is it for you? What I would propose to you, that health is a global commons. It is a bridge across boundaries, and it is our highway to world peace. What we resolve here locally can impact globally. We are not isolated. So as Dr. Harper said, this has been the 2010 International Year of the Nurse. It's absolutely thrilling to be here, right here when we finish 2010 International Year of the Nurse. I invite you to go to this website, www.2010iynurse.net, and to look at the stories and the tributes that we have put together with the work of the Florence Nightingale Museum in London, with Sigma Theta Tau International and the Nightingale Initiative for Global Health. This website will go down December 31st. We won't lose the stories though. They will go on the Sigma Theta Tau website, which is www.stti.org or www.nightingaledeclaration.net, and I will come back and reference that. So let's begin to move forward. Why Nightingale and why now? Well, you've got a group of these incredible 50 letters. For what, 45? 50. 50 letters. And they literally are Nightingale's work as she was networking for the health of India. She never went to India, but she was the most knowledgeable person for all of Indian healthcare in regard to the British military for over 40 years. She educated 4 consecutive viceroys. Never went there, but what she would do, she had traveled in Egypt and Greece in her 20s. And then when she began to focus on global health, she was able to, having seen those conditions about people sold into slavery, the poverty, and we can go on and on about what was there. She then recognized that what was going on in India was part of the same thing. So she would design a sheet and she would send it out to India, and it would come back to her and she would analyze the data. Never went there. This is the collection of letters that you have, of her connecting all of these people that she has known through one particular health officer. So what we know right now is that we have an estimated 15 million nurses working worldwide, but they're working on the personal micro level. Think of it right here in Birmingham. You have nurses that are working in the hospital, in the community, in schools of nursing, in different kinds of clinics. But it's still at the micro level. So how do we then begin to look at, what does this have to do with global health? How are you connected here? This is the big challenge, because there is something called the World Health Organization that sits in Geneva. So see, this is the excitement, and one of the keys here is y'all happen to be here at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, one of the 12 collaborating centers here in the United States for nursing and midwifery. It is fabulous. And so then you've got the macro, so it's bringing here what is the next leg that UAB and this community, because these letters, yes, they're housed here, but all of this impacts and is going to thread through what's going on here in Birmingham. This is going to make more sense when I finish. So right now we have a legion of nurses, of people on the ground throughout the world working. But the big challenge we have right now, though, is this gap. How do we bring the gap of what happens locally and connect it globally? And this is where we're going this afternoon. So let's begin with Florence Nightingale's legacy. And let me just say, for those of you all that don't know, she was born in 1820 and died in 1910. So just think what happened between 1820 and 1910. Well, she first began by a calling in 1837, right before her 17th birthday. She heard the voice of God. She records it. She feels compelled and is driven by this compassion of God to be of service to humanity. She was born into wealth. She refused to marry, and she had 2 opportunities to marry, but instead she decides that she will go ahead and serve in this particular way. She didn't know how she was going to do it, but it was a calling. Nightingale is loved throughout the world. We have ships, airplanes, highways, you name it. Nightingale's been named after it. And if it's not Nightingale, it's the name of Florence. I just recently was in Durban, South Africa, and they have a freeway called the Florence Nightingale Freeway. It's wonderful. As a humanitarian, and the picture that you're seeing up here is from a DVD that you can purchase, and it's on the website of www.2010IYNurse. This is a documentary that came out in 2008, and we actually had a discussion today that where is this big major film on Nightingale? Well, I know it is going to happen sometime in the next 5 years because there's just this momentum building on global health, and Nightingale sits right at the center of bringing all of these pieces together. So y'all put your thinking cap on that this will happen and it will emerge. So her work as a nurse educator, as a nursing administrator, and her work that Dr. Harper spoke about on sanitary advocacy. And so we look at all of this put together, and the reason we know Nightingale's name is because she was a passionate statistician. Now the image that you're seeing here is unique to Nightingale. The pie chart we're all used to seeing, you know, it's just that round circle that has little wedges in it. So when Nightingale came home from the Crimean War and she started compiling the data and looking at death rates per month, she wanted to show something else visually. This is known as the polar wedge diagram, the histogram, and it's also called the rose diagram. So just imagine, you know how a rose opens petal by petal? And so you go around from month, January through those 16 months that she was there, and this is unique to her. Also what you're seeing, do you see 3 different colors? I know we have light in the room, but from the center you see the black of war wounds, the pink of war wounds and causes from specifically 6 fevers. And then all of the turquoise that you are seeing right now is what we have identified throughout the world now as public health issues. Nightingale is looking at these back in 1857. So it's from this forward for the next 50 years of her life that she begins to really work. Let's say 40 years that she worked. The last 10 years, she really didn't work that hard. She also worked very much for work in hospital design, and many of you, I imagine, have been to London, and you have seen St. Thomas's, and like what's happening in our country of all these mergers of systems, it's now called Guy's St. Thomas, not St. Thomas. It's right across from Big Ben. But Nightingale designed the original pavilion plan of this hospital, and an old wing of the hospital is still there of these big windows and the long, wards that happen, which says a lot about her construction. Her work of advocacy and cultural integrity. This is probably the most famous picture that we have of Florence Nightingale, and it is called the Mission of Mercy. If you're ever in London, go to the National Portrait Gallery because this is where it is. I love this picture for a lot of reasons, but you see Nightingale in the very center, and she has the white lace cap on her head, and she has paper and pen in her hand. The very few times that we see Nightingale, she always has paper and pen in her hand because her work has been interrupted. It's very interesting too, this picture. Do you see a man in the window at the back there? This is the artist, Jerry Barrett. He put himself in this picture. The other thing that we know about this picture too is there are people here as interpreters, and we know the name of all of these people that were very important at that particular time in the Crimean War that she was interfacing with, different kinds of officers and physicians. So her work and her communication expertise. This is what we are doing now in nursing, and certainly what's going to come out of the work that will be done at this library in this city with these Nightingale letters, is how do we raise the voice of nursing? This is one thing. Everyone just hopes that when they have to go to a hospital that they will have the loving care and the kindness of a nurse, but also the expertise of a nurse. We know that nurses are very well respected and the most respected profession. This has been going on, for over 12 years. Nurses have been at the top, except for in 2001 when policemen and firefighters were moved to the top of that. But then nurses, again, have come right back to the top. So nurses are valued in the work, and we know this. And so I want to say one other thing that before I go further, her communication expertise. When Nightingale wanted something done, what she would do is she would give it to key people. And for example, Harriet Martineau, who was one of the leading journalists of the day, Nightingale would send Harriet Martineau a letter, and she would say, I need this as a story, and when can you write it? And then it would appear in, the Guardian or London Times and become headlines. And then this is how Nightingale got legislation passed. She would write the bills, and then she had her certain men in Parliament that would go ahead and pass the legislation. Her worldwide networking, and this again is what is a remarkable part of the collection that y'all have got, is her networking that you see in these letters of connecting people throughout India as well as other places, and then you have several other letters. Her letters and her notes on nursing was written initially for the general public. 6 months later, she revises this into 229 pages, and it becomes the first textbook, Notes on Nursing, for modern nursing today. So she calls all of this health nursing. Her whole 40 years of her deep letters, leaving 14,000 letters in the archives. 10,000 are at the British Library. It's the second largest collection at the library. Prime Minister Gladstone's letters are a larger collection than hers. The family letters, 4,000 of them, are at the Wellcome in London. So I adore this picture. I keep it in my office at home. And when I get frustrated and stuck, for example, like what's going on in healthcare right now, how many people don't have access to basic primary health care? What are we going to do about this? All of us must come together and resolve what this is going to be. Not this side or that side, but what will it do to create a healthy nation? Creating a healthy nation leads to what? A healthy world. So let's invite Nightingale's voice in. And what I would like to do is I shape bringing in the UN Millennium Development Goals that apply right here, and you're going to see this right here in Birmingham, Alabama. Every one of these problems exist. I live out in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Every one of these problems exist. They exist in different ways in different pockets, but we have to address these in each of our own community. So I ask you right now, how might you respond to just the little bits that you've heard here, to this deeper and broader context and this legacy that we have for Nightingale? It's not that she is just considered the founder of modern secular nursing, but Florence Nightingale also is considered one of the leading social statisticians and public health experts throughout the world. So let's begin to bridge this gap, pulling it all together. And I want to do this by focusing on advocating for all of these United Nations Millennium Goals. It's not just that they exist over there in third world. How can I be connected there? You know right now, because of what travel has done, we are one world. There's not such a thing anymore of saying, oh, maybe we're connected. No, we are connected. And these are the issues about how we can create a healthy living planet where we can have some survival long past us. So let me develop all of these right now, and let's first start with 4, 5, and 6. What about child mortality? This is huge. Are there deaths of infants in childhood here in Alabama? Yeah, it's in every state in our country. What are we doing about it? And this is one of the big areas. Let's look at what Nightingale said about this. The causes of enormous child mortality are perfectly well known. They are chiefly want of cleanliness, want of fresh air, careless dieting and clothing, want of whitewashing, that's the lime wash, dirty feather beds and bedding, and one word, want of household care of health. Look at these, careless dieting. Do we in the United States have careless dieting? And I'm sure everybody's heard that the United States now is what is called a SAD diet, the standard American diet. We've got to go back to real food. Nightingale would advocate for that. Looking at improving maternal health. Again, the death rates that happen with mothers during pregnancy and complications afterward. And look what Nightingale said about this. Her work in applied statistics, in midwifery and around birthing they're extraordinary. Though everyone must be born, there's probably no knowledge more neglected than this: how to secure the utmost cleanliness for mother and infant. Combating HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases. Is there HIV and AIDS in Alabama? Yeah. It's throughout our United States. It's throughout the world. So when we look at combating HIV and AIDS and sickness, and you also see on there other diseases, the language right now that the UN is trying to change is this includes all communicable and non-communicable diseases. Look what Nightingale says here. What is sickness? Sickness or disease is nature's way of getting rid of the effects of conditions which have interfered with health. It is nature's attempt to cure. We have to help her. So let's look at the other 5. Do these relate to nursing? Do these relate to basic health? That first one, eradicating extreme poverty and hunger. Are there people that go hungry here in Birmingham, Alabama? Yeah. Are there people that go hungry in Santa Fe, New Mexico? Yeah. Throughout our country. And it is devastating, isn't it, when you think about the wealth we have here. Why can't we resolve these issues? How can we come together to collectively unite and figure this out? The second one, achieving universal primary education. Are there children here in this city, in this state? And I can say that because, you know, I'm from Arkansas and I lived in Texas for 35 years and now in Santa Fe. Yes, there are children that are not receiving primary education. And many times in places where we know that classrooms now, because of all the cuts in teachers, they're going to 20 and 35 kids in a classroom. Can you imagine? Can you learn in that? No. So kids are what? They're pushed to the next grade. So they then graduate, but they still are reading at the 3rd or 4th grade level. We have to figure this one out. Promoting gender equality and empowering women. Ensuring environmental sustainability. The global partnerships for development. So let's give some key examples here, and just nurses. This is Kathy Crow. She is running for Parliament actually in Toronto. They've just had their election. I don't know if she won or not. But she personally, as a nurse, took this on. She couldn't stand it to be driving down the streets of Toronto and see homeless people on the streets. So she literally took homelessness on, and they have made remarkable strides because of the work of this one nurse. Look what Nightingale did. In 1860, she worked to reform the Liverpool Workhouse Infirmary. At this time, there were over 1,200 people that were crowded into these filthy, close, unsafe conditions. And so then she began to place trained nurses. And we have to say trained men because it's not the level of education that we have now, but it was beginning to look at structure. And so in doing this, addressing these workhouse situations, what we began to see is that she was addressing the poverty and the lack of people having just basic survival skills. Looking at achieving primary universal education. Nightingale wrote about the key connections between health and education. And can you imagine stumbling over this? And I remember I just wept when I read this, because this is what we're trying to do in healthcare right now. And she writes, oh, teach health, help to the rich and the poor, to the educated. If there be any uneducated, oh, teach it all the more, to women especially, to young mothers especially. And, you know, I'm hearing when I just remember some of the letters that she writes to her students in this, to her students, and then the students, you read their diaries, they talk about, oh, they had a visit with Miss Nightingale today, and she took their hand, and Nightingale always did this. She would either kiss their hand or kiss them on the forehead. And then she would sit down and ask them specific questions about what they were learning. So can you, and Nightingale talked with her hands too. This is what the students describe. Promoting gender equality and empowering women. How important this is, not only locally here, but throughout the world. And again, we'll make this come alive a little bit more. In Nightingale's own time, her efforts to create a nursing curriculum and sustain it is just so powerful. At her death in 1910, there were 1,000 Nightingale training programs in the United States, and the Nightingale curriculum was in 20 countries. That basic curriculum right now is throughout the world, and different centers, such as the Collaborating Center here, are beginning to help structure and take Nightingale's work and go to this wider and deeper level. Just an example of her work. Looking at environmental sustainability. And so throughout the 1850s and 1880s, and this is where we get into looking at the letter collection that you have, so you can read this one. Taking a sip of water. Nightingale never went to India, but she knew what the issues were. So she creates a form, she sends it out to physicians and officers. They then give it back to her, and this is how she became the most knowledgeable person on all of healthcare in the British military over that 40-year period. What is important about this is in 1893, she prepares the young Indian nationalists to create new ways of structuring healthcare in India. And one of the people, the person that led that commission was a young man, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. Have any of y'all seen the movie Gandhi? If you watch it again one of these days, in the very beginning, Gopal Krishna Gokhale is in the very beginning of the movie. And he says to Gandhi, you must come back to India and lead the people of India. Come back from South Africa there. And I kept on thinking and doing my research, this is another connection here, there's got to be a way to connect. You know, Gandhi had to know about Nightingale because Gokhale knew Nightingale. And finally, it took me 4 years, but I was able to find a letter, and I finished my illustrated biography with that, with a letter that Gandhi wrote about Florence Nightingale. And we certainly know Gandhi saying, educate the women of the village and you have a healthy village. Nightingale also was writing these in these letters. Educate the women of the village and you have a healthy village. Look at what happens right here in our own country. Educate the women of the family and what happens, because it's women that make most of the decisions in a family situation about health care. Looking at the different kinds of partnerships, and there are so many partnerships that are going on not only in this School of Nursing, but here within the different centers and throughout. And so when we speak about Nightingale and looking at partnerships, she had a gigantic worldview of networking. She had a gigantic way of looking at connecting the dots. And this is our journey right now. How are we going to connect the dots to create this kind of health? So what I'd like to do right now is invite you to just close your eyes for a few minutes and just take a deep breath. And just feel the energy that starts your breath. And then the exhale. And right here in this moment, I invite you to ask yourself a very simple question. the part of me right now that is most in need of healing is. And the message that I can give myself right in this moment to bring about that healing. And listen to your words. Listen to what comes. If no words come, be with a silence. That is your answer. And before you come back in the room, ask yourself another question. The part of my physical body that I can take better care of is, and listen to your words. What are those basic things, the message you can give yourself? Because when we address the physical, we also begin to address the mind as well as the spirit. We're all connected. So let yourself now come back into the room. And let's really weave this very deep and look at global issues that have happened here in the year 2010. Do you remember in June we had the G8 and the G20 summits in Toronto, followed by the UN Economic and Social Council in July. It's referred to as the ECOSOC Council. All of this is in 2010. Followed then, and they're still voting. One more month, we will know what's going to happen with the UN Millennium Goals. This is going on right now as we speak in New York City. The UN Millennium Development Goals Summit. In September, they put issues on the table to vote on about what governments are going to do, and it will go through about December the 19th. Powerful decisions on global health and nations. But again, those decisions are being made at this macro level. How do we bring those decisions and connect them? So let's begin to connect some of these dots. Improving maternal health and reducing child mortality. These are two of the UN Millennium Goals that are far behind meeting what they had hoped to accomplish by 2015. It's just not going to happen. More emphasis has to be placed on this, and this is about this new looking at mandates that will come down from the UN. So this year alone, just think about what is going on. More than 10 million children will die. They're going to die from preventable causes. Just think about your city, your state. How many children will die this year because of preventable illnesses if they had some kind of access to care? And more than 500,000 women and girls will suffer and die. And this is going to happen during pregnancy or in childbirth complications. Does this impact us? We need to put this in our frame of reference, in our worldview. What is it that I can begin to think about and have a conversation with in my community where I live? And when we see this information on TV, to really think about it and look at the impact and what we can do. There's no reason that women around the world should suffer and die alone in dramatic situations. That one woman suffering and dying every minute of every day, 365 days every year, from preventable deaths and suffering, we have to address these questions. And think about women around the world. Think about mothers in your state, in your city, maybe just down the street on the other side, because all cities have another side. What's going on? Many factors here that we have to consider. For child and maternal health, this is UNMDG 4 and 5, including young women, and what we see here, these are, we know, women that have been raped, that are pregnant. How do we begin to stop some of this violence? Poverty and hunger, UNMDG 1. Lack of education, MDG 2. Lack of women's rights and gender imbalance. How can we promote gender equality and empower women? All of these impact, all of these, on reducing child mortality and maternal mortality. We have to address these. And again, the increased rate that we see in many communities, even in our own country, on HIV and AIDS. Diseases such as these, we know health literacy and health education can begin to make an impact. Our work now is to take the data and do the translational work on the ground every single day. Environmental concerns. Are there places in the community that literally environmental issues are going on? It's happening everywhere, and particularly since we are such a throwaway society. Have any of you seen the video Story of Stuff? I can't say enough about watching that. It's on the internet. It's Annie Leonard's The Story of Stuff. And as we approach Christmas, and yes, we will buy some gifts, consider the way stuff is packaged. For example, my hairdryer of 11 years just died on me. I went to buy a new one. All I want is a simple one. This simple, a small, hairdryer is in a package this big. And what are we, yes, we recycle, but we have to look at the impact, the environmental concerns, the environmental pollution. And one of the big things on health factors, we haven't the idea. We know how everybody now is connected to their cell phones. The environmental pollution that's happening throughout with all of these new electronic gadgets. And it goes on and on. What I would say is let's stand in a voice and have the conversations and the dialogue around this and creating these global partnerships of all kinds in our communities. They're needed everywhere. And I'm sure some of you recognize this picture. This is Greg Mortensen, who wrote the book 3 Cups of Tea and Stones into Schools. He is a nurse. And he right now is working with our Army officers, our generals, and the people right at the top in Afghanistan and Pakistan, because they're not doing it correctly. Let's look at how we can create education for these young people. Where his schools have been built, only one has been damaged and rebuilt. And it's because these warlords want their children to receive primary education. But this is the work of one nurse, and this is what this is about. Let's have one voice, raise it, connect with others. So connecting these dots, this is what our life is about. And we are blessed to live in houses that are warm. We have cars to get around. We have food to eat. But we too are responsible in our community. How do we create health literacy for all people across the world? Because it's when we connect these dots that we're going to achieve what it is that we want to see. So since the human race began, we know that women have delivered for society. I love this Lancet quote that came out last year in 2007. It's in the 19 October issue of 2007. Since the human race began, women have delivered for society. It is now time for the world to deliver for women. Why is this important? Because if we don't have healthy mothers, what's going to happen? All the other developmental efforts that include poverty and hunger and literacy and human rights, prevention, conflict resolution, environmental sustainability, investment in society, all of them are going to fail. And that's what we're seeing right now with some of the UN Millennium Goals. They're close to failing, but we're going to see, hopefully, some kind of resurrection with this. And look at this. Though everyone must be born, there's probably no more knowledge more neglected than this: how to care for the mother and the infant. And this is why this is important. First, let's put more, and that should be feet, a T. I just saw that. Put more feet on the ground. We have a nursing shortage. We are now looking at new areas of ways that we can get more nurses working with community health workers in all communities to develop and educate and sustain. Millions more nurses and midwives and community health workers are needed in all of our communities. And I love these 4 women outside their labor and delivery room in Sierra Leone. And this is a young nurse doing a rotation in Uganda, a nurse in Afghanistan. This baby was born right after the earthquake in Haiti. Second, let's see the direct connection between motherhood and development. Because when our mothers die, what happens? Their families and their communities suffer. And when the families suffer, they lose a lot. They lose their food security because it's many women around the world are the ones that do the work. Their ability to take their products and their food to market, to sell, to create some money for their family. The environmental sustainability is lost. Their human security is lost. And when that is lost, what do we have? Little boys then that become child soldiers, that become adolescent soldiers. So we have to really take Nightingale's work of health literacy, the importance of getting this work out, and can you imagine what she would have done today with email, phone, fax? It's astounding. Remember, all of these letters were handwritten, or then carbon came in, later in the 1870s and 80s, but most of them are handwritten, and she just gallops along. And when you see this collection, just watch how it's done. She rarely crosses out a word. And if she does want to say something else, it's one simple line, then she'll create what it is that she wants to say. Third, let's recognize global media. This is where we are right now that is so exciting. What if we have really responsible television? And I'm sure many of y'all have access to cable, and most of it is, let's stop there. Responsible television? No. This is what we have right now, the ability to create these partnerships with the Health Science Center, with the community, with radio, with television, and we can move it out, and then we have webinars, and we can go on and on about the technology. And the social media that is coming on board is just, I can't even wrap around it. It's happening so fast. But what is important here is it is essential for widespread and accurate outreach that we get this message out. And when we get the message out, let's start specifically about child and maternal suffering and death. When that word is out, something begins to happen. If we do not have proactive participation of public media worldwide, there will never be mobilization of public concern necessary. And this little letter, this is how big this little letter collection is. Because when these letters then begin to circulate and the dots are connected around weaving this, it is absolutely gigantic. I can't imagine what's going to happen with this letter collection. So, for us to call for the changes that we all want to see happen, we have to create an ability to have a dialogue and to say, what can I do about each one of these issues? So when we waste stuff, you think about, I left that room a while ago and I left the electricity on. I don't need to keep those lights on. We can go on and on about these. And this is Nightingale's legacy for us. She said, health is not only to be well, but to use well every power that we have. So I want to just kind of wrap up the PowerPoint here and invite you to go to the Nightingale Declaration website, www.Nightingale Declaration, spell it as one word, and Nightingale too with an I, nightingaledeclaration.net. And go sign the Nightingale Declaration. It is a secure website, so when you sign that, know that. And this is what it says, and this is our work of weaving this web with Nightingale and looking at her message. We, the nurses and concerned citizens of the global community, that includes every one of us here. So we, the nurses, with you, the concerned global community, hereby dedicate ourselves to achieve a healthy world by 2020. We declare our willingness to unite in a program of action, to share information and solutions, and to improve health conditions for all humanity, locally, nationally, and globally. We further resolve to adopt personal practices and to implement public policies in our communities and our nations, making this goal of the year 2020 achievable and inevitable, beginning today in our own lives, in the life of our nations, and in the world at large. We are connected to this one world. Everything we do on planet Earth has an impact. So in summary of Nightingale's amazing work, analyzing the 1893 that my dear colleague Diva did, these are from that paper. The first one is to make health and influencing positive health determinants a top priority in human affairs. The second one, value and sustain nurses and their caring in healthcare. The third one, collaborating across disciplines and across cultures for promoting health in community settings. Thinking globally. Think globally, act locally to create health literacy for both genders and all ages. And 5, making media a catalyst for nursing and for health. And I'm sure some of y'all saw the story that was that yesterday? That was in the newspaper. And one story after another is going to be able to help people become more conscious of what this health literacy is about. The 6th one, keeping health holistic and transdisciplinary. Using the word transdisciplinary here is we can't just address the physical problems. We have to address the human spirit as well in all of our dialogues. And the 7th one is to answer your own calling. What is it that you want to do for your own health, for the health of your family, and for your community? What are those conversations? And what can you do when you wake up every day and say, this is what I'm called to do today about my health, about my family's health, about my community's health. And again, I'd like to close this segment with Diva's wonderful poem. This has been read many, many times. I invite you all to go to the website www.2010iynurse.net. And you heard Dr. Harper speak about the April 2010 international service that we had at the National Cathedral. And if you click on the right side of the web page, on the very bottom there, you pour yourself a cup of tea and watch the National Cathedral service. It is absolutely inspiring. 50 minutes, treat yourself to it. And Diva reads this poem at the podium from the great altar. She titled this poem, The Flame of Nightingale's Legacy. Today our world needs healing and to be rekindled with love. Once Florence Nightingale lit her beacon of lamplight to comfort the wounded, and her light has blazed a path of service across a century to us. Through her example and through the countless nurses and healers who have followed in her footsteps. Today we celebrate the flame of Florence Nightingale's legacy. And let that same light be rekindled to burn brightly in our hearts. Let us take up our own lantern of caring, each in our own ways, to more brightly walk our own path of service to the world, to more clearly share our own noble purpose with each other. May human caring become the lantern for the 21st century, that we may better care for ourselves and for others, and for all of creation. May we be the keepers of that flame, that our spirits may burn brightly, to kindle the hearts of our children and our great-grandchildren as they too follow in these footsteps. This is our journey. This is what we have been called to do. And as we move forward to see if we can continue to reflect on her legacy, the treasures that are here in this archive, and the impact that they will have in many, many ways that I know will be forthcoming.